0 creak. The door of the wooden house opened and Wu Shaoqi walked out while stretching her body. Her beautiful figure looked even more beautiful under the contrast of her dress. After the storm last night, the air in Star Moon Island became fresh after the rain. At the same time Wu Shaoqi walked out, the door of the wooden house not far away also opened with a creak and a girl in green walked out with big steps. "It's you. I heard it. Did the thunder last night scare you to tears?" Zhou Xingyue looked at Wu Shaoqi and put her hands on her hips. In her delicate eyes, there was a trace of fear. There's a hint of mockery. "Do you think I am the same as you?" Wu Shaoqi heard this and crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her aura was not weak at all. HMPH. Being choked by Wu Shaoqi's words, Zhou Xingyue pouted and her eyes rolled, and just as she was about to speak, Zhou Buyi had already walked out from behind her. Mu Yuyang. Zhou Buyi stood in front of Zhou Xingyue and looked at Mu Yuyang, who had just stepped out of the room. A strong fighting spirit immediately erupted from his eyes. Glancing at Zhou Buyi gently, Mu Yuyang clenched the 5 fingers in his sleeves. On the surface, he did not seem to care about it at all. He leaned against a wooden pillar and did not say anything. Arrogant fellow. A blonde youth who followed Zhou Buyi looked at Mu Yuyang coldly, his eyes filled with anger. The young man's name was Lei Yunting, and he was a student who was second only to Zhou Buyi in the Southern Sky Academy. He was a genius of the Thundercloud clan in the Starfield, and the status of the Thundercloud clan in the Starfield. He was second only to the 4 major families, and his clan had a very rich foundation. They had always wanted to replace the 4 great clans. Without a doubt, they cast their eyes towards the weakest of the 4 major families, the Xiao clan. "By the way, Brother Zhou, can you let me deal with that Xiao Yan from the Yunluo Academy?" A fierce look flashed across his eyes. Lei Yunting said in a low voice. The original information was that Xiao Yi from the Xiao clan might join the 4 academies competition, but the latter didn't come. However, since Xiao Yan's surname was Xiao, he would have some connections with the Xiao clan no matter what. "Your opponent is Lin Dao." Narrowing his eyes, Zhou Buyi said with an unshakable tone. Hearing this, Lei Yunting didn't speak anymore, but his eyes were suddenly filled with endless fury. He gave Zhou Buyi a fierce look, but he could only swallow his anger. "Let me deal with Lin Dao." Seeing Lei Yunting's gloomy face, beside him, what? These 2 men had always been at odds with each other because of their families. If they had a conflict now, it would be a huge blow to the Southern Sky Academy. All right. Zhou Buyi had also thought of this point. He could only helplessly agree with the overall situation. HMPH. When he heard this, the corner of Lei Yunting's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He seemed to be quite satisfied. "Let's go." Su Ziyang walked out of the wooden house. He was wearing white clothes and looked handsome. He casually glanced at Zhou Buyi and the others who were not far away. Su Ziyang was expressionless. He led Xiao Yan and the others towards the town. Today, the host of 4 academies competition would announce the rules of this competition. After that, the competition would officially begin. Not long after Su Ziyang and the others left, Elder Tang of Southern Sky Academy walked out of the wooden house with a yawn. He could not help but be complained by Zhou Xingyue. She clearly saw Wu Shaoqi looking at him proudly before she left. After leaving Star Moon Town, the few of them went straight to an open space not far from the town. Many people had gathered in this place. However, everyone had a solemn expression on their faces. What's going on? The expressions of the experts from the various major powers were solemn, which attracted the attention of Xiao Yan and the others. Su Ziyang looked at Old Man Chang, who was standing in front of them. The old man's face was expressionless, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. "The people from the Star Sky Academy are here." While Xiao Yan was puzzled, Wu Shaoqi suddenly spoke in a low voice. Xiao Yan's eyes lit up. He silently looked towards the distance. Xing Qianyue was walking at the front with a smile on his face. Behind him was Seng Hao, Wu Tiandu and Shi Kenghai, whom he had met once before. Apart from them, there was also a seemingly lazy young man. He was following a black-haired man with a cold face. The man was walking behind Xing Qianyue, indifferent to everything around him, as if he was living in an unworldly world. Those 2 should be Sang Hao and Kang Feng. Wu Shaoqi's voice quietly sounded beside Xiao Yan's ear. Xiao Yan looked at the 2 young men whom he had never seen before. In such a crowded place, he didn't dare to use the monarch flame. With his senses alone, he could vaguely feel that both of them were unusual. Everyone is here, right? When the students of the Star Sky Academy arrived, Old Man Chiang's old voice slowly sounded. However, it was full of confidence, and it resounded in everyone's ears like thunder. No, there are a few people who didn't come. Some of you might know the reason why they didn't come. Old Man Chiang suddenly changed the topic and chuckled. His sharp eyes swept across the crowd. When some of the people in the crowd heard this, their expressions changed slightly, and became even colder. I have received the order from the heavens. Last night, there were a total of 8 people who broke into the forbidden area of Star Moon Island. However, they didn't even touch the edge of the forbidden area, and all of them died in the outer region. The old man's face turned gloomy. His words instantly stunned everyone. How is this possible? The weakest of the purple-robed Marquise's group was at the peak of the Emperor cultivation, but all of them died? Some of the people in the know turned pale upon hearing this. They involuntarily let out a furious roar. He was an elder of the heavenly Yuan Gate who had come with the purple-robed Marquis. When he heard that the latter had died, he did not even have the time to consider before he let out a furious roar. You can go in and give it a try. Their deaths are completely self-inflicted. Old Man Chiang coldly snorted. After which, he laughed indifferently. Fine. I have been on the island for so many years. I have seen the death of Heavenly Sovereign. Besides, there are a few ordinary Emperor cultivation here. It just so happens that the 4 academies competition is about to begin. Let's just treat it as a sacrifice to the heavens. Sacrifice to the heavens. When the old man's words came out of his mouth, everyone on the scene was at a loss for words. Those experts from the same sect as those who had died were so pale that they couldn't speak. The competition is about to begin. The elders of the various powers will stay here in peace. Don't think about anything else. To put it bluntly, it's not a good thing. With your bit of strength, you won't be able to jump around here. The old man's voice suddenly became extremely ethereal, as if it came from the highest heavens, causing everyone to be in a trance. Now, let me tell you the rules of this competition. After bringing the topic back to normal, Old Man Chiang lightly coughed and waved his sleeve. As the origin chi ran, it formed a clear map of the island in front of everyone. This is the general map of the Star Moon Island. The students of the 4 academies will head to the 4 sides of the island. I don't know what kind of danger is hidden in the mountain range on the island. The final destination is to reach the highest peak. As he spoke, the old man waved his hand, and the dot on the map instantly enlarged. It was the peak of the Star Moon Island. The journey from the foot of the mountain to the peak is a long journey. There will be a stage, and every academy must send 1 person to fight. The winner can continue to the top of the mountain, and the loser will be eliminated. There were 4 stages in total, which meant, if one's luck is bad, in the final confrontation at the top of the mountain. In some academies, only 1 person could fight. What he faced, there will be 5 people on the opposing side. Oh, hearing the rules of the competition mentioned by the old man, the leaders of the 4 courtyards were silent for a moment. This was the first time they had seen this kind of competition rules. As a result, the tactical arrangements became especially important. The entire competition will last for 2 months. Correspondingly, the distance of each segment will be 12 days. One must arrive at the stage after 12 days. Otherwise, everyone will be eliminated, and, since it was a competition, there was no absolute fairness. There were a total of 10 Star Moon Islands in the entire Star Moon Island. The academy who holds the battle commands can choose any one of their opponents as their opponent on the stage. 10? Xiao Yan frowned when he heard this. According to the ratio of the 4 academies, it was obvious that not every academy would be able to get a share. Seizing the battle command was undoubtedly a part of this competition. You all understand, right? Alright, according to the distribution of the 4 courtyards, all of you will lead your students to the corresponding places. Quote, 1. As soon as Old Man Chiang finished his words, everyone turned their eyes to the 4 groups in front of them. Next, it was time for these 20 students to show their true strength. Among the crowd, although Zhou Yuan was standing at the back, his gaze was like a sharp sword. When he saw the 5 people from the Yunluo Academy, his gaze instantly fell upon Xiao Yan. This guy, Zhou Yuan raised his eyebrows. He couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Looking at his rough appearance, it gave him a sense of familiarity for a moment, but looking at his aura, it was far from what he had expected. Let's go. Su Ziyang looked coldly at Xing Qianyue, who was not far away. He waved his sleeve and led Xiao Yan and the other three toward the east of Star Moon Island. Naturally, there was an old man from Star Moon Town leading the way. This kind of competition is exactly what I want. Xing Qianyue smiled coldly. He couldn't help but feel wild joy in his heart. Among the 20 participants, the 5 from the Star Sky Academy were undoubtedly the strongest. If they were to fight one-on-one, they wouldn't be any weaker than anyone else. While thinking, Xing Qianyue also led Sang Hao and the other 3 to the west. Although the rules of the competition were very beneficial to the Star Sky Academy, they still had to give a few warnings just in case. Tang Hong also led Zhou Buyi and the others to the south. A trace of contemplation appeared on his fair and chubby face. In that case, he needed to think about the problem of tactics. Hey, the pretty woman from Glaze Academy looked at Su Ziyang, who had left with her charming eyes. Her red lips were slightly raised, then she waved her delicate hand and led Zhan Qingyi and the other girls towards the north. At the end of the line, the girl called Kiera had been under everyone's gaze for such a long time that her face had already turned red. She lowered her head and quickly followed. Teacher, do you know who the 5 students from the Yunluo Academy are participating in the competition? Watching Su Ziyang leave with Xiao Yan and the others, Zhou Yuan still had no clue. He turned around and whispered to his teacher. Yunluo Academy? I heard those people mention that one is called Mu Yuyang, and the other one is called Lin Dao. I have forgotten the names of the remaining 3. Hearing Zhou Yuan's question, the fat old man scratched his head. After pondering for a moment, he said, there seems to be another person from the Xiao clan. What's his name again? Xiao. When Zhou Yuan heard this word, it was as if a thunderclap had struck his mind. In an instant, he came to a realization. Xiao Yan, it's definitely him. Although he was shocked in his heart, Zhou Yuan's facial expression didn't change at all. He was already very familiar with such a calm attitude. Nodding his head lightly, Zhou Yuan didn't continue to ask. However, a profound look flashed across his eyes and became even more solemn. He still remembered what happened in Forest Domain. He was saved by his teacher's best friend, Old Monster Wu, and then he was brought to the Profound Extreme Sect in the Star Domain. He became the disciple of the second elder of the Profound Extreme Sect, Shu Mo, who was also his teacher now. Given Zhou Yuan's disposition, he naturally accepted reality easily. Under Shu Mo's guidance, his cultivation speed rose steadily like a rocket. However, in just 5 years, he had become the #1 disciple of the Profound Extreme Sect, and had also attracted the attention of all the higher-ups of the sect. At that moment, the cultivation resources were endless, and all kinds of natural treasures and medicine pills were rewarded. He had finally reached the Monarch Emperor 2 years ago, and now, Zhou Yuan's strength had steadily reached the 6th Monarch Emperor. He relied on the vigorous origin qi in his body and his profound mentality. Even the old Monarch Emperor level expert in the sect was no match for him. I have been nurtured by the entire Profound Extreme Sect to reach this stage. This Xiao Yan, just by entering the academy, already has the strength of a Monarch Emperor. Narrowing his eyes, Zhou Yuan remained silent and followed Shu Mo out of this place. The rules of this competition are very unfavorable to you, but your luck isn't too bad. On the way, Su Ziyang quickly analyzed the rules of this competition. You're way up the mountain. On the eastern island, the Star Sky Academy was located in the eastern island. The possibility of fighting on the west island isn't high. You need to be careful of the Glaze Academy and the Southern Sky Academy. Xiao Yan and the rest nodded silently. They had a slight understanding of the experts of these 2 academies. You can decide the order of the battle in the arena at that time. Also, try your best to find the battle command. Only then can you take the initiative. Slapping his head, Su Ziyang finally sighed. He didn't know how to explain the long speech that he had wanted to say, but he had to look at the actual situation. Along the way, there was no one talking. The old man from Star Moon Town who led the way kept smiling and didn't interrupt. After about an hour, they finally arrived at a plain. There was a flag stuck in a certain spot on the plain. It was the gathering point of the students. After bringing them to the place where the flag was planted, the old man suddenly turned around and said, Lord Zhang said, I'll tell you these things after I bring you there. On this island, there are many dangerous places on this island. You students must be careful during the competition. Try your best to leave if you encounter any strange places, or if something happens. There's nothing he can do about it. Hearing the old man's words, the few of them looked at each other. They hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. All they could do on this strange island was to listen to these people's words. The old man finished speaking. He stood in his original spot and did not say anything. Su Ziyang was unable to say anything when he saw this. The few of them waited quietly. After a long time, the old man suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the starlight that suddenly appeared in the sky. He nodded at Xiao Yan and the others and said, "Everyone, the competition begins now. I wish you all good luck." Xiao Yan and the others were slightly stunned when they heard this. Then they looked at Su Ziyang. The latter frowned and took a deep breath. "Go. This time, the Yunluo Academy will depend on you all." "I think so too." Mu Yuyang laughed. His body moved, and he had already rushed towards the distant mountain forest. Being able to exchange blows with the geniuses of the various academies was exactly what he wished for. Lin Dao and Mu Yuyang rushed out almost at the same time. The thoughts of the latter were reflected even more strongly on his body. "I say, it's best if you don't have too much hope." Zhu Tianwo smiled bitterly. These few days, he had also seen the geniuses of various academies. Because of this, his confidence in his own strength of 3 monarch emperor warriors was clearly much lower. As long as you do your best. At this point, no matter how much he preached, it was useless. Su Ziyang pursed his lips and said in a deep voice, "All right." Xiao Yan laughed lightly. He and Wu Shaoqi followed Mu Yuyang, one after the other. Behind them, Zhu Tianwo didn't slow down at all. In the blink of an eye, the 5 of them had already disappeared into the dense forest. "Elder Su, let's go. Lord Zhang has said that all the leaders and elders of the various powers have to wait at the peak of the mountain." After the 5 of them disappeared, the old man turned to Su Ziyang and said kindly, "Thank you for your help." Su Ziyang let out a long sigh. He looked at the forest where the 5 of them had disappeared and silently followed the old man. At the same time, in the 4 directions of Star Moon Island, the students of the other academies were all rushing towards the dense forest at the foot of the mountain as starlight flashed across the sky. At this moment, the curtains of the 4 academies' competition were drawn. On the plains where the 4 academies had left, Old Man Chang clenched his fist in the air. The flickering starlight on the horizon finally dissipated. He glanced at everyone present. The former gently smiled, and his slow and steady voice resounded in everyone's ears. "Everyone, please move to the summit. In 2 months, we will be able to see the most exciting competition." Quote, "To whoosh." In the dense forest, a strong wind suddenly swept past. In the next moment, it disappeared without a trace. Mu Yuyang did not even use the origin qi in his body to silently kill a monarch spirit-level spirit beast. Be careful, all kinds of 4 academies competitions and Star Moon Islands will awaken in the Star Moon Island after the 4 academies competition begins. If you encounter any of them, don't kill them immediately and run away. Otherwise, you will attract the attack of countless spirit beasts and heavenly beasts. A dark green snake the size of an arm was held in his hand. As the origin qi surged, it actually burned the snake until only the spirit core was left. After doing all of this, Mu Yuyang lightly clapped his hands and said in a soft voice, "He he." Wu Shaoqi lightly smiled, her beautiful eyes were filled with joy. With Mu Yuyang and Xiao Yan leading the way, she did not need to make a move. After the 5 of them entered the dense forest, they quickly divided their tasks. Xiao Yan's soul power was the strongest. When they walked together with Mu Yuyang, they paid attention to the front. When they discovered the situation, Mu Yuyang could eliminate it as soon as possible. Zhu Tianwo and Lin Dao walked at the back, relying on Zhu Tianwo's sacred spirit fire body's sensitivity to the fire source qi. They could also feel the strange flow of the fire source qi in the air at the first moment, while Wu Shaoqi walked in the middle. She could quickly provide support to any side, and with this lineup, the 5 of them advanced at a very fast speed. The dark green snake, which had wanted to attack Xiao Yan and the others earlier, was discovered by the latter through his spiritual strength. With Xiao Yan's reminder, with Mu Yuyang's strength, he did not need to waste any effort to kill it. If Mu Yuyue can come here, with her illusion purple eye, she should be able to play a better role in scouting. Rubbing his eyebrows, Xiao Yan looked at Mu Yuyang and said softly, "She can't. She is too weak." Mu Yuyang smiled and shook his head. This mountain is so big. How are we going to find the battle command? Zhu Tianwo looked around. The dense forest covered his sight. Just by looking at it, he could not detect any danger. Since you said there is, then you will definitely appear in a more obvious place. Mu Yuyang thought for a moment and suddenly said in a low voice, Xiao Yan, to what extent can you use your soul power? Xiao Yan was shocked when he heard her. Before he could say anything, Wu Shaoqi said in a low voice. You want to use your soul power to find the battle command? That's impossible. You must at least know the appearance of the battle command in order to find it. Mu Yuyang gently smiled. Xiao Yan also smiled and nodded. I understand. However, if we have to exert all of our soul energy, we won't be able to take care of other aspects. After saying that, Xiao Yan sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and unleashed his soul energy from his forehead. In an instant, it enveloped the entire jungle, and he carefully examined every single plant and tree in this area. The area covered by the soul energy of a perfect alien realm could reach up to thousands of miles. Now that it was compressed to such a high degree, it could only be used to cover this small area, so naturally, he could observe it more clearly. What is he doing? Seeing Xiao Yan sitting down without saying anything, Wu Shaoqi was startled and asked curiously. Mu Yuyang looked around. Although they had suppressed their qi to the lowest point, Xiao Yan's soul power would more or less reveal a trace of qi. In this situation, they had to carefully prevent any danger that might appear in their surroundings at any time. I don't know what the battle command looks like, but at least I know the qi of the spirit beast and the trees. As long as we exclude all these, there is a high chance that we can find the battle command in an uncertain place. Mu Yuyang turned around and explained to them. But how long will it take to find such a huge mountain? Wu Shaoqi suddenly realized. She nodded her head in enlightenment. She looked at the endless forest and frowned again. At least it's better than not finding it. Besides, if we can't find it, the other 3 academies won't be any better. Without waiting for Mu Yuyang to speak, Lin Dao, who was standing behind him, spoke slowly. Clearly, he agreed with Mu Yuyang's idea. Good, good. It must have been hard on this guy. Looking at Xiao Yan, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, a trace of pity flashed across Wu Shaoqi's brows. She muttered softly, "This is a group battle. Everyone can only reach the end by using their strengths. Xiao Yan's soul power is stronger than all of us. It is the best decision to let him find us." Mu Yuyang looked around once again. He didn't dare to be careless in this place. Xiao Yan is in charge of finding the battle command. The 4 of us must not be careless. Carefully observe the surrounding environment. If there is anything strange, send out a warning. Mu Yuyang instructed in a low voice, showing off his outstanding leadership skills. With Mu Yuyang's instructions, Wu Shaoqi, Lin Dao, and Zhu Tianwo were all 120% alert. The origin monarch qi on the surface of their bodies slightly curled up, and they carefully felt everything around Xiao Yan. In the northern island region of Star Moon Island, with a light wave of her hand, a stream of qi energy slashed out and the dried branches in front of her were cleanly cut into ashes. Zhang Qingyu lightly snorted and was about to take a big step forward when a white and tender hand suddenly stretched out and grabbed her collar. Wait a minute. Kiera held a corner of Zhang Qingyu's lapels and said in a low voice that was not clear. What is it? Beside Kiera, a beautiful long-haired woman asked curiously. The woman's name was Chen Lu and her eyebrows were like a painting and she had a rather flirtatious look. This place is very dangerous. Don't be reckless. Kiera's pretty face turned red and she only said these words after a long time. As she spoke, she stretched out her finger and pointed at a huge tree in the distance. Oh! When Zhang Qingyu heard this, her beautiful eyes moved and she immediately held her breath. The source of qi in her body was revealed and it turned into a faint armor on the surface of her body. She extended her jade-like hand and spread out her 5 fingers as if sensing something. In the next moment, 5 fingers that were like white jade shook slightly and a golden origin qi rushed out and hit the huge tree in the distance. Oh woo! A miserable roar was heard. In the next moment, the huge tree trembled and a huge lizard jumped down from the tree. The lizard's face was ferocious and it spat out blood. Its skin was the same as the trunk. Ghost-face lizard, Kiera, your senses are really strong. You can even find such a hidden spirit beast. Seeing the ghost-face lizard leap out, Chen Lu couldn't help but exclaim. This kind of hidden spirit beast was one of the best among all spirit beasts. Due to its skin color being the same as trees, it was usually hidden on the tree trunk. When someone walked past it, they would spit out a poisonous liquid, as if they were secretly reaping it. Sue, the ghost-faced lizard, squeaked. Its combat strength wasn't very strong, so it could only hide in the dark. Now that it was discovered, it could only flee in panic. You want to escape? A smile emerged on Zhan Qingyu's beautiful face. Although she looked carefree, her thoughts were extremely meticulous. She naturally knew that she could not let this kind of opponent in the dark remember her. Swoosh! Zhan Qingyu gently waved her hand and a golden origin chi quietly shot out. In an instant, it caught up to the ghost-faced lizard. As the origin chi spun around, it caught up with the ghost-faced lizard. The ghost-faced lizard didn't even have the time to let out a miserable cry before it lost all signs of life. After killing the ghost-faced lizard with one blow, Zhan Qingyu's beautiful eyes slightly moved. Then she looked at Kiera and softly said, "Kiera, your perception is the sharpest. Help everyone observe the surroundings and we will be responsible for killing it." Kiera heard this and nodded her head with a red face. She followed beside Zhan Qingyu and blinked her big eyes as she carefully sensed everything around her. Under the latter's perception, the few girls also successfully avoided a few dangers and headed deeper into the mountain forest. There is no one here. A moment later, Xiao Yan opened his eyes and shook his head as he stood up. The few of them didn't say anything. They protected Xiao Yan in the middle and continued to walk forward. Every time they walked a distance, Xiao Yan would use his soul power to sense his surroundings again. This way, a day's time would pass immediately. The night quietly came. In the forest, there was a dull beast roar that came out of nowhere, making people scared. They didn't know how many times they sat down to sense their surroundings. When Xiao Yan's soul power reached out again, he suddenly felt something different in a place. Battle command? These three words instantly rushed into Xiao Yan's mind. It was a pitch-black night. A crescent moon hung high in the sky, shining with a faint radiance. However, it was swallowed by the dense forest deep in the mountains. The forest was pitch black, and wherever one looked, it was pitch black. Woo-woo! A cold beast's roar came out of nowhere, causing one's hair to stand on end. The entire forest entered into the night, as if it had become hell on earth. Crack crack! The sound of falling leaves being crushed suddenly rang out. In the next moment, 5 figures swiftly flashed past. The leader was Xiao Yan. The 5 of them had faint origin chis covering their bodies, allowing them to feel any changes in their surroundings even without the help of the light. Is this the place? After rushing for a moment, Xiao Yan stopped beside a huge rock. He sensed something behind him and immediately stopped. After carefully sensing for a moment, he did not find anything unusual around him, so Mu Yuyang softly said. Xiao Yan held the huge rock with his hand. Soul power surged out from between his eyebrows once again. Under the observation of soul power, light gradually appeared in this area. Every blade of grass and tree here was emitting faint light spots. Countless light spots gathered together, making this area as bright as before under Xiao Yan's soul power. All living things had a spirit. This light was the manifestation of the life force of every plant and plant. Every plant had its own life force. By observing the life force of the plants, he was able to find the battle command. As for the lifeless rocks and sand, due to the fact that they had existed here for a long time, more or less, they had the aura of the mountain forest, and the battle command had been hidden here for the past few days. It was quite easy to distinguish the two of them. While Xiao Yan was carefully searching, Mu Yuyang and the other 3 did not relax at all. Zhu Tianwo's hands formed a seal, and the flame pattern on his forehead circulated gently. He urged the sacred fire body to feel the flow of the fire source qi in the air. Wu Shaoqi also used the secret technique of the Fire Emperor scripture to pour the green flame into her eyes. Although she was unfamiliar with it, she could still see the environment within a few meters. Lin Dao and Mu Yuyang stood guard beside Xiao Yan, one in front and the other behind. Both of their eyes were like lightning, and the origin monarch qi on their bodies flowed crazily. Once they sensed that something was wrong, both of them would immediately launch a thunderous attack. In the dark and gloomy forest, no one would be stupid enough to start a fire and advance forward. That would only summon endless attacks. After a long while, when everyone was highly focused, Xiao Yan finally opened his eyes. He gently rubbed his aching eyebrows. During this day, he had used his soul power too frequently. Even a perfect alien realm soul could not bear the burden. Over there, he pointed his finger at a pile of rocks in front of him. Xiao Yan let out a light breath. He found something he had never seen in the vast forest. If it wasn't for his soul power reaching the perfect stage, he would have fainted before he could find it. All right, Lin Dao, Zhu Tianwo, Wu Shaoqi, the three of you continue to pay attention to your surroundings. Mu Yuyang nodded and ordered calmly. Wu Shaoqi and Zhu Tianwo naturally did not have any objections. Lin Dao frowned and did not say anything. He listened to Mu Yuyang's arrangement. He didn't have much to say to begin with, so he couldn't be bothered to argue with Mu Yuyang about this matter. The few of them slowly walked towards the pile of rocks. The moment they approached, Xiao Yan's expression suddenly changed. Zhu Tianwo and Wu Shaoqi also issued warnings almost at the same time. A cold light flashed in Mu Yuyang's eyes. The origin chi around his body surged. He waved his right hand and the heavenly net sword was already tightly held in his hand. He thrust it forward. Puff! The air seemed to have been pierced through. Mu Yuyang's eyes were like lightning. His body trembled and he dodged the swiftly charging attack. The moment Mu Yuyang and the unknown enemy clashed, Xiao Yan and the others quickly reacted. They quickly positioned themselves according to the previous arrangement. A soft sound was heard. The five of them unleashed their strongest fighting intent. Although their auras were weak, the sharpness contained within them did not weaken in the slightest. Xiao Yan and the others looked over. A huge ape crawled out from the rubble. It was about the height of 5 people. The skin color of the giant ape was extremely similar to the color of the boulder, plus it was night. If they weren't careful, they wouldn't notice it at all. The giant ape retracted its giant tail that was attacking Mu Yuyang. Its eyes were like blood, and the dark night didn't affect it at all. Which academy are you from? The giant ape looked at Xiao Yan and the others and grinned, speaking in human language. Yunluo Academy. At this moment, Mu Yuyang had shown his strong sense of leadership, protecting Xiao Yan and the others behind him. When he heard the giant ape's question, he said in a deep voice. Yunluo Academy. Tisk tisk. Those old men aren't right. I thought the Star Sky Academy would discover the battle command first. The giant ape laughed when it heard this. Then, its furry hand grabbed behind its back and took out an iron box that was only half the size of its palm. The huge tail rolled up the iron box. The huge ape's blood-red eyes looked at Mu Yuyang and the others once again, and its voice rumbled. Regardless of which academy you are from, those old fellows said that if you want the battle command, you must pass us. As he spoke, the huge ape suddenly stomped on the ground. The huge rock beside him exploded with a loud bang. The huge fist smashed into his chest, emitting an endless ferocity. As the huge rock exploded, debris scattered in all directions. Xiao Yan and the others hurriedly dodged it. The huge ape's strength was at least at the peak of Monarch Emperor. To the 5 of them, defeating it was not difficult, but in the dark forest, it would be difficult to be careful not to be discovered by other beasts. Compared to Xiao Yan and the others, the giant ape didn't have so many concerns. It let out a low roar and moved quickly. It rushed towards them. On the path it passed, the dried branches and leaves cracked, and the huge tree in front of it was broken in half. Quickly end this battle. At this point, everyone had no way out. They had to obtain the battle command. If it was any other time, any one of the 5 of them would have the strength to fight against the giant ape. Now, they could only work together to deal with it quickly. Mu Yuyang shouted and took the lead. The heavenly net sword in his hand silently pierced through the void. The origin chi on his sword rolled, forming a killing move. Lin Dao's movement naturally wasn't slow either. He clenched his fists tightly and the Imperial Dragon Point blue spear swept out, creating a gust of wind. Like a slight dragon's roar, he rushed towards the giant ape. According to Mu Yuyang's previous arrangement, he and Lin Dao would be the main attackers. Xiao Yan and Zhu Tianwo, who had the sharpest senses, would pay attention to the dangers that might appear in their surroundings. Wu Shaoqi would wait for an opportunity to attack. Boom! The giant ape's arms suddenly stretched out, blocking Lin Dao and Mu Yuyang's attack. At the same time, its thick and powerful tail whipped through the air towards Mu Yuyang. Both of its blood-red eyes emitted a soul-stirring force, causing Mu Yuyang's body to stiffen slightly. Su! Wu Shaoqi's figure was like a bolt of lightning as she rushed forward. The crimson-red bow in her hand appeared out of thin air. As the origin chi gathered, a sharp arrow shot out, causing the air to vibrate continuously. It hit the giant ape's tail, buying Mu Yuyang some time to dodge. With a twist of his body, he dodged the giant tail of the giant ape. Mu Yuyang frowned slightly and lightly shouted, "Be careful, don't look at its eyes." Mu Yuyang appeared beside the giant ape after he said those words. The heavenly net sword in his hand pierced towards the giant ape's abdomen at an extremely strange and tricky angle. Lin Dao also freed his hand. The Imperial Dragon Point blue spear in his hand whistled and arrived at the giant ape's abdomen in an instant. A spear and a sword simultaneously pierced towards the latter's abdomen, which had a relatively weak defense. The huge ape's eyes were like blood. Suddenly, it let out a stern roar. Its body suddenly grew. In a moment, it had already reached dozens of feet in height. It faced the gloomy crescent moon in the sky. The scene was extremely shocking. The two of them missed the attack and quickly retreated. They gathered together with Xiao Yan and the other two, and looked at the giant ape with a serious expression. This beast is really trying to attract the other heavenly beasts here. Sensing the unusual movement in the distance, Xiao Yan gritted his teeth and said with a slightly bitter expression. Zero. At the same time Xiao Yan spoke, Wu Shaoqi and Zhu Tianwo also sensed something. Their expressions changed slightly as they looked towards the depths of the dense forest. Under their keen senses, there was already quite a big movement there. Boom! When Xiao Yan and the others sensed it, the giant ape roared furiously. The millstone-sized giant fist fell down like a meteor. It was extremely powerful, and the explosive force blasted the trees below. Clang! The heavenly net sword instantly protected the top of its head, and the origin chi coiled around the blade of the sword. In an instant, it transformed into a barrier that was dozens of feet in size, and blocked the huge ape's punch with great difficulty. The barrier shook slightly, and with a cracking sound, it shattered into pieces. Mu Yuyang's facial expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. The giant ape's strength had completely surpassed the peak of Monarch Emperor. It had reached the true Emperor cultivation. "Senior, are you all right?" Wu Shaoqi asked in shock when she saw Mu Yuyang's pale face. "I'm fine, Xiao Yan. You and Wu Shaoqi, Zhu Tianwo, guard against the other heavenly beasts. Lin Dao, let's attack this guy together." Mu Yuyang shook his head and said without thinking. After saying that, he turned around and suddenly soared into the sky. The origin chi around his body surged and illuminated the entire area. Since it had caused such a loud noise, there was no need for him to shrink back anymore. At the same time that Mu Yuyang acted, Lin Dao also charged forward without saying anything. The Imperial Dragon Point blue spear in his hand was like an azure dragon as it roared. It actually forcefully sent the huge tail of the huge ape flying. Crack! With a wave of the giant tail, all the trees around the giant ape were shattered, and pieces of wood flew in all directions. While Mu Yuyang and Lin Dao were attacking the giant ape, Xiao Yan and the other two didn't show any neglect. Their eyes instantly fixed on different directions. Under their senses, several astonishing energies were rushing towards them. Swoosh! Xiao Yan waved his palm. A ball of scarlet golden flame was held in his hand. Flames were burning in his eyes, and he was not restricted by the darkness at all. Swoosh! In the next moment, a black shadow had already charged over explosively. Xiao Yan had already noticed it when it pounced towards Xiao Yan. The moment before the black shadow pounced on him, his body suddenly moved. The black shadow missed. At the same time, his palm slammed towards the black shadow's neck, followed by a miserable roar. A huge black panther fell to the ground in a sorry state. The black fur on its neck was charred black. Black blood seeped out. After being injured by Xiao Yan, the black panther let out a low roar and jumped up from the ground. Its movement was as fast as lightning as it pounced towards Xiao Yan once again. Xiao Yan did not dare to be careless when he saw this. Although the Black Panther had just entered the Imperial Heavenly Divine Beast realm, the strong muscles and bones of beasts far surpassed that of humans. If he was not careful, he would suffer a painful attack. While Xiao Yan and the Black Panther were entangled in a fight, another two Monarch Emperor-level middle-rank heavenly beast rushed out from the darkness. Wu Shaoqi and Zhu Tianwo charged forward and entangled the two heavenly beasts. There were dozens of green eyes in the surrounding darkness. These were spirit beasts that had come after hearing the news. Their strength was low. Naturally, they did not dare to compete with the heavenly beast. All they could do was wait quietly in the periphery for the final harvest. What's that sound over there? In the cave formed by a few huge rocks, Zhou Buyi suddenly frowned. He walked out of the cave and looked into the distance. He mumbled to himself. The sound was faint and unclear, as if it was an illusion. Zhou Xingyue yawned as she walked out. The cool breeze of the late night blew on her, causing her to wake up immediately. What entered her eyes was darkness. The night covered the land and it was rather sinister. The origin chi in his eyes gradually disappeared. Zhou Buyi pursed his lips. He did not see anything, but he felt that something was not right in his heart. Big brother, quickly rest. Forcing her spirits up, Zhou Xingyu's sleepy eyes were hazy as she said softly. Go to sleep. Zhou Buyi turned around and looked at Zhou Xingyue. He smiled lightly and his eyes were filled with love. That direction should be where the Yunluo Academy is located. They must have encountered some trouble. While the two were talking, a gray-haired young man walked out of the cave and spoke in a deep voice. The young man's name was Luo Zhen. His status in the Southern Sky Academy was equal to the Xiao Yi of the Yunluo Academy. You can feel it? Zhou Buyi was slightly startled when he heard this. He immediately looked into the depths of the dark forest, and his eyes sparkled with a bright light. His eyes were filled with origin chis, and his vision penetrated through the layers of darkness. It was as if he could see a vague and huge figure far away. Woo! Zhou Buyi could not help but let out a painful cry after just looking at it for a moment. He covered his eyes and stopped. This method of harming his eyes was too much of a damage to his pupils. Unlike Zhou Buyi, Luo Zhen's eyes were slightly white and there were pale spots on his pupils. After looking at it for a long time, he gently closed his eyes. A moment later, he opened his eyes and said softly, they seem to have been attacked by a heavenly beast. Heavenly beast? Zhou Buyi thought for a while, then shook his head and said with a bitter smile, Yunluo Academy is going to be completely wiped out this time. If they encounter a heavenly beast at night, they will die for sure. Luo Zhen nodded slightly when he heard this. They had witnessed it for themselves today. Devil beast could be seen everywhere in this mountain forest. One had to be careful when walking during the day, not to mention at night. Be careful. All of you go to sleep first. I'll guard you tonight. After waving his hand and letting Zhou Xingyue and Luo Zhen go in, Zhou Buyi turned around and sat on the bluestone in front of the cave. He kept a high vigilance of the surrounding environment, but his eyes were looking into the distance. In the end, he helplessly shook his head. If something happened to Mu Yuyang, then he would have some regrets. In Glaze Academy. On one side, the dark sky was dotted with barely visible starlight. Kiera crossed her arms and sat outside a black tent. Zhan Qingyi and the other three were sleeping soundly inside the tent. She was the one who initiated the night watch. Regarding Kiera's ability, the four of them were very assured and gave this difficult task to her. Kiera's big eyes seemed to light up slightly in the dark night and she felt that something unusual was happening in a distant place. Kiera gently closed her eyes and her delicate body trembled slightly. It was a long time before she muttered to herself. It was that day's student. With his sharp senses, Xiao Yan once again dodged the Black Panther's thunderous attack. He frowned and did not speak. The space here was too narrow and he had concerns. He had to observe his surroundings and could not reveal his true strength. Hence, he was entangled by the Black Panther and could not escape for a long time. Not far away, the giant ape's aura was overwhelming. Its huge foot stomped on the ground, destroying the earth. Lin Dao and Mu Yuyang had their concerns as well. They didn't use their strongest attacks, and could only keep fighting the giant ape. They couldn't do anything for a while. Xiao Yan, hurry up and get rid of them. There are even more heavenly beasts coming from afar. Just as Xiao Yan was thinking about how to take care of them. While everyone was distracted, the Xiaoao suddenly appeared on Xiao Yan's shoulder and spoke urgently. What? Xiao Yan suddenly woke up. He realized that he had wasted a lot of time. If this stalemate continued, it would only attract more and more heavenly beasts. At that time, there would really be no way to escape. We can't drag this on any longer. Otherwise, more and more heavenly beasts will gather here. Xiao Yan couldn't care less. He immediately shouted and grabbed the blue flame ruler with one hand and crimson gold flame with the other. His chi completely erupted and he no longer hid anything as he rushed towards the Black Panther in front of him. After Xiao Yan's reminder, Mu Yuyang also made a prompt decision. The Heavenly Net sword and the Origin Chi exploded. In the next moment, it had already formed a domain in the sky above the giant ape. Great Luo Heaven, capsize! Mu Yuyang used the second layer of the Great Luo Heaven. In an instant, thousands of seemingly material blades slashed down from the sky, raining down on the giant ape. Lin Dao somersaulted in the air for a few times before stabilizing his body. With a twist of his wrist, a dragon's roar was suddenly heard from the Imperial Dragon Point Blue Spear. Lin Dao tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, transforming into an azure dragon that carried an endless amount of power as it rushed towards the giant ape. At the same time, Wu Shaoqi and Zhu Tianwo no longer hid their true strength. They unleashed their strongest attacks. In an instant, the chi of this region soared to the sky, and the light was dazzling. Are they crazy? The five of them joined hands to deal with a single heavenly beast, and they actually used their full strength. In the distance, Zhou Buyi suddenly stood up. He looked into the distance and mumbled to himself. He could sense the power of this aura even from such a far distance. How could I make such a low-level mistake? When he came back to his senses, Zhou Buyi was shocked and doubtful. He clenched his fist and still did not act rashly. As the leader of the team, he could not do anything reckless. After sitting down, Zhou Buyi took a deep breath and finally calmed down. His eyes were serious and no longer looked into the distance. This kind of place couldn't allow any distractions. The Four Academies competition was a cruel place, and with Zhou Buyi's disposition, he was naturally accustomed to this kind of cruelty.